Hey guys, let's talk about making a colored and decorated letter inside of Adobe Illustrator. One of the most, or one of the coolest examples of this, I think, are comic book lettering, superhero logos. And it's interesting how a lot of times the symbol for one of those characters is going to be a letter. It's going to be, you know, A for Avengers, I for Incredibles, and so on. And the way they're styled and the way they're colored gives them an interesting effect. And we're going to recreate this, and I'll show you how to do it in a few easy steps in Illustrator. One of my favorites from these examples is Incredibles. I think it's kind of a boring letter, the letter I, and I've always loved how they added this little swoosh and little ellipse shape around the edge of it to make it more dynamic. The one we're going to focus on here is X-Men. That one's going to be a little easier for us to create, but these same techniques we're going to use to create it can be applied to anything, any other logo treatment. So we're going to start off with a blank page in Illustrator and build up what we need as we go. So to help you out, we're going to use the shape tools, and we're going to kind of easily, I don't want to say easily, but we're going to use those tools to make this possible. So let's switch from the rectangle tool to the ellipse tool. And there's a little trick you can use to draw a symmetrical, perfect shape and actually draw that shape from its center. What you do is you press Option on your keyboard and you hold the Shift key. And when you hold Option and Shift and you drag, that circle is drawn from its middle. And that's good for positioning purposes to make sure we get symmetrical objects. Now, I'm still holding onto the mouse, and when I get it to the size I want, I'm going to let go of the mouse, and I get my symmetrical circle. I'm going to go ahead and change its color so it's more obvious what I'm doing for the next few steps. I'm just going to pick orange as the color. And what I want to do now is I want to make sure that I get another circle in the same position. Now here's the thing. I'm going to use the same keyboard shortcut, Option and Shift, to draw my circle. But when I have the previously drawn circle still selected, the cursor wants to interact with this. I need to let go of the shape first, which you can do quickly by pressing Command on your keyboard and clicking the background. That lets go of the object. That makes it a little easier. And then when you let go of Command or Control for PC users, it returns to the ellipse shape tool. Now, I'm going to just move my cursor until it's about the middle of that circle, and I'm going to hold Option and Shift and draw a new one. But this time, I want it to be slightly smaller than the previous circle. And now I'm going to change that color so it's a little more obvious that it is a different color and a different shape. So I'm trying to draw the ring that goes on the outside of the X right now. And I have to build it out of these existing circles before I can get it finished. Now, if your circles aren't quite aligned, no problem. We can use the alignment setting to fix that. So I'm going to go to my selection arrow, the black arrow, select both circles. And then if I have the alignment tools visible, you can click horizontal alignment, and then you can click vertical alignment. And what it does is it moves them so that they're exactly aligned with one another from their center. If you don't see the alignment tools, you can find them under the window menu, under alignment, or you might find them on your properties dialog box, depending on what version of Illustrator you're using. Okay, good deal. So now I've got my ring. Now I need to make the spokes of my wheel, of my X. But trying to draw a diagonal X or to use an X letter from the font menu or something could present a few problems because it's not exactly symmetrical, and I have to deal with a few other things. And it's hard to draw a diagonal object. It's much better instead to just draw a straight up and down rectangle and then turn it. And I'll show you how that works. So if I click on the ellipse tool and I switch to rectangle, Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just somewhere near the middle of this circle, I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to make sure that that rectangle is covering the orange part of that ring. So it's not longer than the two circles, but it's long enough that it is inside the boundary of that orange ring. And I can try to make it the same width as the ring, the orange ring. I can make it a little thicker, kind of is your preference. And I let go, and you can see how now I have that rectangular shape there. I'm going to go ahead and color this the same orange that I used for the outer ring so that you can see where we're headed. Now, again, that rectangle isn't exactly aligned with those previous circles. So here I can use the alignment again to line up all those things on their center. So I'm going to select all the pieces with the black arrow. I'm going to select horizontal alignment, and then I'm going to select vertical alignment. And now all are lined up on their middle, which is exactly what I want. Okay, now what I'm going to do is create the second spoke on this X, but I'm going to go ahead and make it out of a kind of into a cross. Now, there are a couple ways to do this one. I don't want to go back to the rectangle tool and just try to draw another one because it'd be really hard to make it the same size. So why not just copy and reuse this one? Now, if I do copy and paste, that works. I can just do that, but it's out of alignment with everything. So I'm going to show you another little trick just to kind of get things lined up exactly. So if I press Command C or Control C and copy this rectangle, if I go to the Edit menu, there's a little something called Paste in Place. What Paste in Place does is it puts that object in the exact same position as the one that you copied. So it's going to duplicate that rectangle, and it's going to plop it down right on top of the other one. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do Paste in Place. The weird thing is we didn't see anything happen because it put the exact same shape, selected the exact same way in the exact same spot. And so it doesn't look like there's anything there, but if I moved it, you would see that, yeah, it made an exact copy. Now, all I got to do now is, while it's selected, I move my cursor over the control corner. See where I get the back and forth rotate? Got to move that cursor into the right spot. I don't want stretch or scale. I want rotate. And I drag sideways. And if I hold Shift, look at that. It goes diagonal on me. I think you get the idea. I'm now going to select the other one, hold Shift, and turn the other way and hold, and it goes 45 degrees. And now you can see how I've got my X built out of those two rectangles. Okay, almost there. We've got all the pieces. Now we need to join them together. Now, some of you may be familiar with Pathfinder and the different Pathfinder options that are available. You can certainly use that to merge your objects into one. I can also show you the Shape Builder tool, which is another way to do it. Why not show you both? Select all the pieces. Switch to the Shape Builder. That's the tool that has the circles and the arrow on it. And what Shape Builder does is it adds or subtracts to your selection, and it merges things. So if I wanted all these pieces of this orange shape to go together, I would simply just drag my cursor and drag through those pieces I wanted to add. Don't even have to be very careful about it. Drag through, and you can kind of see how the shapes kind of fade. That means they're selected, and then I let go, and look, it merged them. And I would do the same thing on the other spoke. I would just drag through that spoke, being careful not to hit the yellow area, going all the way through. You can see it's adding them as it goes. I let go of the mouse, and blam, they're all together. Then what I would do to remove the yellow is I would hold Option, and that converts the Shape Builder tool into a minus, and I can click those areas and remove those yellow pieces, and I've got my X shape. Not bad, eh? Okay, let me undo all that, go back to where I was, and try it with the Pathfinder. If I want to use Pathfinder to do it, again, I have everything selected. I'm going to go to the window menu and I'm going to open Pathfinder. And for this, what I'm going to use is what's called merge. Merge is pretty handy because what it does is it takes similarly colored objects and merges them. So anything that's colored orange with a black outline, it's going to merge. Anything that's colored yellow, it's going to merge. So it's like one step. So I just click merge and blam, everything's joined and put in place. The only thing that's different is I still need to get rid of those yellow pieces, but when it merged those together. So that actually means that if I use my direct selection arrow and I click a yellow piece and delete it, it's removed from the object. And now I just have that solid X shape. Okay, now we got to do the coloring and get this thing to look a little more metallic and shaded. So we're going to use opposing gradients for this to create that effect. To make this a little more dramatic, we also probably need to put a black rectangle behind it so it's a little more obvious. So I'm going to do that next. I'm going to just draw a black rectangle and send it behind the shape. So now I've got that in place. Good. Okay. Now I'm going to use my gradients in Illustrator. Now, gradients involve a few different tools and palettes in Illustrator, so it can be a little tricky to remember which one's which. But what we're going to do is go ahead and open the window menu, and we're going to go to the gradient palette, make sure it's open. And then we're also going to go to the library button on the swatches palette. The library button is in the bottom left corner. It looks like a little stack of books. Click on that. I'm going to go to gradients. And I'm going to go for metals. I'm going to look for an adamantium color here. There you see I have now a new grouping of gradient swatches. And there isn't one right or wrong one for this. I could try a circular one or a horizontal one. I kind of like that one versus the circular one. But it's not quite in the right position or the position I want it to be in. So I need to turn that gradient and get it to go the right direction. So easiest way might be to come here to the gradient palette and just type in 90 degrees because I want it to go 90 degrees. And I could adjust these little sliders on my gradient bar if I wanted to extend or change their position a little bit. I could do that pretty easily. Or I could use the gradient tool. And that gradient tool, I can click and drag, turn, reposition, stretch, up and down, you know, whichever direction I want to go. I think it needs to be parallel to one of the spokes. So either that way or vertical up and down or that way. I'm just going to go with that. And you can reposition with that gradient tool as many times as you want. Just click and drag, move it the direction you want. Okay, but to create a bevel on this, that's going to make it look like it's got a little bit of a shading to it. And so I'm going to do that pretty simply with a stroke on this Illustrator shape. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I've selected the stroke on the toolbar. So that is the, right now you can see it has none. It's not filled with anything. And I'm going to select either that same gradient or another one. Let's start with the same one. And click that stroke and add that stroke with that gradient. Then I need to make sure that my stroke is thicker. So I'm going to increase its size. I have got wow, I can't talk today. The stroke palette open, and I'm clicking upward and getting 6 point there on the thickness. And you can see that just by having that stroke and that gradient go the opposite direction of the base stroke, it gives it a cool metallic shade, a metallic effect to it, like the two shading lighting are opposing each other. It makes it look a little bit better. There is one more thing I could do to give it a little bit of a flare, not a flare, but a little bit of a shade to it that makes it look like it's got a cool little extra reflective part. And that would be to add just a slight little rounded shadow to it. Here's how we would do it. I'm going to take the ellipse. I'm going to draw an ellipse over the object. And look at how it inherited all that shading and coloring I'd done on the previous object. I don't need that. So I'm going to turn off the stroke, and I'm going to change the stroke color to black. Actually, I'm going to go with like a dark gray, just a flat dark gray. Now watch what happens with the transparency palette. I'm going to go to the window menu and open transparency. And then using transparency, there's a little cluster of palettes here, so I don't want it to be lost. Let me put that one back. There we go. So transparency palette, look at how it has what are called Photoshop blending effects. And it says normal, and I'm going to switch that to multiply. And look at how that blends with the shape and it becomes transparent. And then maybe I'll do like a little bit of I'll lower the opacity a little bit. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Maybe I'll turn it a little bit so it goes that way. Nah, I like it the other way. And looks like the opacity is down to about 40 or something. And that just gives it that little extra little flare, a little mirrored effect. All right, so that's how you do it. That's how you can build a decorated, colored, illustrated text object pretty quickly with some vector options and some vector shapes. All right, so thanks for playing. See you next time.